So warm welcome from the banks of the Riviera at Posick. We're a couple of weeks away from the start of the glorious 16th of June. Here with Broads Angling Services Group Chairman Kelvin Allen to give us an update on what's been going on over the last few weeks. So Kelvin, probably a good place to start is Hoveton Great Broad. Have we got any update on that?
Yeah, actually we met the agency at one of my Angling Trust 6 monthly meetings with the regional or area management team, and on the agenda we managed to get a 20-minute slot with the agency telling us what the monitoring plan was proposed for monitoring the impact of the barriers isolating Hoveton Great Broad from the rest of the River Bure and its catchment on the Northern Broads. This was a 20-minute update, and we had very little time for feedback. But I've shared that verbal response with the Angling Trust and with Fish Legal and with Paul Colson and the IFM, and I have to say 2 weeks ago we formally wrote to the area management team in the agency here with our concerns and our sort of bitter disappointment that we just do not feel that their current proposals, as agreed with Natural England, are robust enough to convince Natural England that they need to open the barriers if there's a detrimental impact to the fish stocks in the Northern Broads.
Well, given the fact, given the way that the whole project's been managed by the Environment Agency, this unfortunately doesn't overly surprise me. But it's obviously it's very critical now the project's going to go ahead that we have a robust monitoring plan. So you're expecting a response from them in due course?
Yeah, I mean we asked for a response. Just the other thing to say is we didn't think the plan was robust enough, and it didn't have any baseline definitions, and it seems to be more built around the skills and the capabilities of the agency team here in East Anglia more than the technical needs to actually come up with a complex plan.
Yeah, that's really sad to hear, but I guess we'll just have to wait for their response and see what they come back with.
That's all we can do.
So we'll talk about the River Wensum. Last time we had you in front of the camera, Kelvin, you were on the banks of the Wensum with the PhD study that's going into there on what's happening with the roach populations. Can we have a quick update on what's going on there, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing really is probably one of the reasons why we're filming today, because that blog we done last week on the River Wensum is nearly got 7,000 hits, which is probably the best ever that with as BASG have ever achieved. So yeah, and some really great comments and feedback from those 7,000 people who have viewed that video. I mean, clearly we won't know the outcome and the analysis of that PhD study probably until September. But one of the other things that's come out of it is I've got other professors from other universities wanting to come and do further studies on the River Wensum. So that's something that we'll be compiling in the coming weeks.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's 4 or 5 decades since anglers started talking about the problems with the roach on the Wensum. So hopefully now we've got some of the right minds that are looking at the right things to find out what's going on and put the Wensum back to how it used to be.
Certainly a move in the right direction.
From the Wensum back here to on the Broads that are behind us, one of the things that's become a big conversation recently about the Broads is the effect of climate change and rising waters. And I know you've been involved with that. Can you give us an update on some of the things you've been working with in that sector?
Yeah, I mean, I do a regular feature in the Broad Society Hanser magazine, which I've been talking to the experts for the last month around this whole climate change report, and particularly there's a report from a group called Climate Central who published a report, and we'll perhaps drop the URL for that online. We'll pop it in the comments. But they're basically saying now in their online graphs and online maps of the Broads that by 2030 the whole Broads executive area, including where I'm sitting today, actually will be swamped by water.
Wow, that's pretty scary.
Well, scary is, is it being done to produce a headline? I think we all understand where the Broads will be by, 21 in 100 years' time, particularly if we don't make any changes to, net zero and all this good stuff, and the world heats up by 2 or 3 degrees. Clearly they'll have a huge impact. But this report, whether it's headline breaking or not, 2030 is only 7 years away. And the concern that I have really is none of the statutory bodies are telling us what's the risk and the likelihood of that flooding actually happening. So is that a 1 in 200 year event, or is that a 1 in 10, 1 in 20 year event? That, to me, is the biggest risk, not just to the Broads fishery, but actually to all the businesses and the tourism market and the social economics of the Broads. Because, if you combine all the investment in the Broads for perhaps the next decade, I don't know how many million that would be, quite a few I would suggest. But if you went to the financial backers and they got wind that, there was a 1 in 20, 1 in 10 year chance of the whole place being subsumed by seawater, what's the likelihood of getting that investment? So I think that, there's a need to have that recognised, better understood, so actually we can sustain for the Broads, certainly for the next decade or two. Where that goes after that, I think it's all in our hands with how, man across the world manages the climate.
So in the Broads here, we really need the agencies to start coming a little bit more public with some of the conversations that we suspect and actually in some cases we know are being had behind the scenes. Increased contingency plans for flooding. Needs to be more of a public conversation. Is that where we need to go, do you think?
Well, I'm not quite sure if there's an organisation who actually represents the key Broads businesses and its stakeholders around the table. Yes, the Broads Future Initiative has got an elected forum which is primarily made up of local councillors, but as the chairman of that group has said to me, they're looking at where we'll be in 100 years' time. I think the concern I have is now we've got this report, scary or not, telling us we're going to be subsumed in 7 years. I think that's more of the here and now, and where's the voice for these people? I mean, the Broads Authority used to have forums where all these stakeholders would come and voice their concerns, but for one reason or another, the Broads Forum is no more. So whose role is that? And I think, it's a question that I think needs answering.
There's certainly some important questions that need to be answered in there. I mean, the fishery is one thing, but across the river from us, the Surlingham Ferry pub here, I mean, you can see when you look at it, it's inches in winter from being flooded. Surely as a business they need to know these answers so they can plan for the future in the long term.
Well, it's a great example. If you just look across there, and we're sort of mid-water at the moment, if the predictions are in 7 years we're going to see another half a metre rise in average water levels, I mean, that pub will be underwater continuously. So this is the reality. And what's the likelihood of that happening? Say, is it 1 in 200? Is it 1 in 10? Is it 1 in 20? Surely somebody must be able to give us some answers.
Yeah, because we've just watched some bream spawning just further up the river here, so maybe in 10 years' time those bream are going to be pushed up as far as Norwich, and we're going to be talking more about fishing for mullet at the start of the season rather than fishing for the bream themselves on the Broads.
Well, that's that's the dynamics of it all, but go the other side of New Mills Yard, and as we saw last week, the fish are nearly at death's door. So we're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea here at the moment.
So certainly some big issues that are facing the Broads for the future and some important questions to answer. But a project that's in the here and now is the line recycling scheme that's planned for the Broads for this year. So Kelvin, can you give us an update on that, please?
Yeah, so we successfully put a bid into Love the Broads to secure the funding to purchase 35 of these line recycling bins. That actually is the single largest deployment of the line recycling bins in this national programme. And given the Broads is the UK's largest inland fishery, we think it's really significant. We're also being supported by the postcode lottery, so we hope to have a number of these bins installed by the glorious June 16th, and particularly where this all kicked off on the need for these bins was around Houghton and Wroxham. And for those who have stood on the bridge at Wroxham and looked at the general public feeding the birds, probably no wonder that we were seeing ducks, geese, swans, pigeons entangled in anglers' lines, because it's not unusual to go down there and actually count over 100 birds, within 200 metres of the bridge, to be truthful. So we felt, and Duncan's been more involved in this than whatever I have, but we've had meetings with the parish council in Houghton, and the line recycling bins were seen as a good way forward to resolving some of the line entanglement issues with wildlife. That says just us putting the bins up may not resolve the issue unless Joe Public and the angling public actually respects the line, the wildlife, and the Broads. So the bins are just part of the mix.
So the line recycling scheme is a great opportunity for anglers to actually recycle their line on the riverbank, rather than, as at the moment, having to take it into the tackle shops. So as you say, Kelvin, hopefully people will use that and it becomes part of some good behaviour. So the line recycling scheme is a great opportunity for anglers to do their bit to protect the environment. So we've talked a little bit about longer term environmental issues on the Broads, but there's also a question of long term sustainability for angling on the Broads, and BASG's been doing a bit of work with that. So Kelvin, what's the update on that, please?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to say, but it's not particularly good news. As we've talked about, I've talked about in my monthly blogs probably all the way since Christmas time, we applied into a scheme called the National Environmental Investment Readiness Fund. What an acronym, NERF. We actually applied back in February. Me and Duncan probably spent the best part of a month working on this solid. And we heard this week that sadly our application was unsuccessful because the scheme was oversubscribed, and according to the facilitators, we weren't competitive enough. What that means, I'm not sure, but on the wider front, where does that really leave us in our plans to put the angling in the Broads in a sustainable position for the future? And I think if you take, particularly where we are here at Posick, and the agency are looking to relinquish their liabilities and their assets here at Posick, and we're looking to BASG to take that on, without some form of permit scheme in the Broads, and actually taking an income from the people who are using the angling in the Broads, where do we go? That's the question, and I think we all need to look at ourselves quite deeply, and the management team, the directors of BASG will be talking about this in the coming weeks about what does this mean for us.
As you say, Kelvin, it's for angling to have a sustainable future, it needs to generate an income, and that's not an easy thing to do, and it's full of controversy, and it's disappointing that the grant hasn't been successful, because that would have created a project that we could have actually answered some of the questions, both for the angling community, the tourist community, and the landowners. But it isn't to be, so we'll have to find a different solution. So regardless of what happens with angling sustainability in the future, BHG has been working on a platform which allows the angling logistics to be brought into the 21st century. Kelvin, do you want to tell us a little bit about that solution?
Just 3 or 4 years ago, when Clubmate was first launched, but we didn't think it was mature enough to meet our needs. Now there's over 200 angling clubs using this bespoke solution to manage their club's finances, administration, ticket sales, etc., etc. So we've joined the party, and at quite a reasonable fee, to be truthful. It's all still free for our volunteers and our members.
So the Clubmate system is going to be more a route for communicating with volunteers in the time being, and our general communications will be more on social media platforms. Is that right?
That's quite right. So, as we've seen with the Wensum article last week, we'd never get 7,000 people, pick up emails. That's beyond the pale, to be truthful. So, if you want to hear about what BHG is doing, Facebook, and I think we've now created a Instagram account, and we're probably going to have a TikTok account in the future. And this is how young people are using communications. I thought everything was email and Facebook, but quite clearly that's not the case. So we need to move into the modern world, and actually this video blog is us moving into that new world, to be truthful.
Yes, it is, and it's been a bit of a challenging day today with dodging the rain showers, a boat that appeared behind us, coffee breaks, but hopefully we've managed to get the message across on a video.
Staying on the Clubmate theme, for those people who attended our last 2 membership meetings in the Oaklands Hotel, we were calling for working groups and working parties to look at various different things across the Broads and engaging our volunteers. Clubmate actually supports the grouping of all those people together. So if I just want to send emails to, for instance, people who want to work installing line recycling bins, basically a click of a button on Clubmate and we can send people an email address.
So it's easier to get the relevant information to the relevant people at the right time.
Absolutely, and the same applies to people who look after the Wensum compared to looking after the Broads. We can segment, and I think the word is segment, and actually we can email the right people at the right time. And I know that's been confusing for many members over the last 2 or 3 months.
That's great. Well, hopefully that technology will help us move forward. But just a point on the monthly member meetings, we do still have spaces for new faces to come and join us at these meetings. We have a really successful format in working together as working groups where everybody gets a chance to be involved and discuss. So if you're interested in the Broads, if you're passionate about the Broads and you want to come and help make the Broads a better place to fish, then drop us a line either on our Facebook page, or we'll pop the email in the comment section and we'll get you an invitation out. So thanks for watching.
And finally for me, as Duncan started and I'll end, given we've got the glorious 16th starting on 2 weeks time, all the best and tight lines for 2022.